Hello and welcome to the Read to Know podcast, where the goal is to actually remember what you read so then you can better apply it to your life. On this podcast, we go through a book one chapter at a time, and then we actually practice remembering what we've read. So if you want to follow along, we're currently working our way through Bob Goff's book, Dream Big. I'm Zach Brown, and my friend Chris Yarber is joining me to help discuss and break down this book. Also, if you're on Apple Podcasts, it would be huge if you left a rating and review for us. It would help out a ton. If you're not on Apple Podcasts, no worries. Just send this to a friend who might be interested. Anyway, thanks again for listening and enjoy the conversation.
Zach, have you ever been rock climbing?
I have not in real life. I've done the
Not
fake,
in real life?
I've done the fake kind, the indoor rock wall climbing.
Oh, no, that's what I meant when I asked you that question. Yeah. No, I've never been real rock climbing. Fake rock climbing. I see what you're saying now, though. Fake rock climbing versus, not real rocks.
Well, because he starts out this chapter talking about rock climbing, and it's literally rock climbing, outdoors on a cliff. Right. You could fall and die.
Right.
That's what he's talking about.
Which makes this story so much more dangerous, when you read it. But that's why I asked you that question.
Okay. Yes, I've been indoor rock wall climbing.
Okay, that's how I should have asked it.
I do enjoy it, but your fingers get destroyed afterwards.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And okay, so this one was actually outside. There was an obstacle course this was at a camp, a good old church camp growing up. You know how those are. Gotta love youth church camps. Yeah. Where somehow they got away with doing the dumbest of things. And as a youth pastor myself, I would not get away with doing some of these things. But it would be really cool if we did have like an outdoor rock climbing, course outside. That would be cool. But I did it for the first time when I was in middle school. And as we've already expressed on this podcast before, I am terrified of heights. I don't like them. That's why I don't like roller coasters. I do not like heights. And so the first time I ever went rock climbing, they showed us how to do it. They strapped us in. And so I decided that I was going to go first, and everyone had a partner, because they were holding the rope on the other end. And so I start climbing. And at first I end up okay. But the higher and the higher that I started climbing, they just kept telling me just to look up, not to look down. So I didn't want to look up because I wanted to impress everyone and get as high as I could. And and so I was climbing. I was probably about halfway up because this was rather high, and someone yelled something or said, "Hey, Chris," or something like that. And what I ended up doing was I looked down. And when I looked down, my foot missed one of the rocks, and my body went down the rock wall. And thankfully, my friend was holding the rope on the other end, tight, keeping it tight, so that I wouldn't just smack to the ground. But I just remember my body bouncing literally off of the rocks because I slipped with that foot, let go with my hands, and I just went probably for a couple feet before he caught on to me. And then I just kind of, was lowered down real slow. But for a second there, luckily it wasn't my face. It was just my body was going down the rock wall. So
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Couple things though about that rock climbing wall. First off, was it at a slant? Because usually, at least from my experience, usually the rope is far enough out that if you let go and you fall, you're not anywhere really close to the wall enough to hit it.
Yes, this rock wall, about halfway up, which I had gotten to this point, then it branched out in 3 different sections. And so it went up and then it went out.
Okay.
And so when I was halfway up,
the rope is closer to the wall.
The rope is closer to the wall. And so when I had gone about halfway and was kind of in a half position between straight up and down and going this way, because I really wanted to reach, touch the top rock and then just be lowered down, I would have seen that as a victory. And ever since then, I have not been rock climbing indoors or outdoors. That was the last time. I'd be up for it again, but.
Well, here's what's interesting about that is that they also didn't have the automatic kind of machine to slowly let you down too. There was an actual person holding on to the
there was an actual person
rope.
Holding on to it. Yes, one of the counselors.
So you still had to trust that dude.
Yeah, still had to trust him. Yeah, he was anchored in, holding it down.
Yeah.
So
okay,
make sure you're harnessed in.
See, the ones that I've done too have been the the pulley system where it auto, lets you down slowly. It doesn't let you fall,
Yeah.
so they don't need someone there to hold on to the end of the rope.
Yeah.
But wow.
These guys were holding on to the rope with gloves on, and they had it around their waist and stuff, and the excess, down here. So, but yeah, it was
intense,
scary. Yeah, it was intense.
That's a funny story.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, I honestly I wish there was a rock climbing gym close by, because I thought about that would be a fun kind of like membership to get, and then it would be something different, like a physical activity, kind of like an exercise that isn't just normal, like going to the gym and like lifting weights or doing something like that. But something physical that would be fun to do. It's kind of like an exercise thing that isn't, just lifting or cardio or something.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I've looked into that because I think that would be fun to do on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and it's good exercise because it keeps your muscles strained for quite a long time because it's a rather slow activity. And so I love how Bob in this chapter uses the story of him and his friend actually rock climbing, not what we're talking about. And he uses it to say, sometimes in your ambitions, towards your ambitions, life is going to move a little bit slower than maybe you thought you would. And I don't know about you, when life is moving a little bit slower, it's not quite going the way that we expected, as we talked about in the last 2 chapters. That's when you can get really, really discouraged. And so sometimes our road to our ambitions are going to take longer than what we may have thought.
Yeah, and discouragement is such a hindrance to progress.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You get discouraged and you just come to a screeching halt. And the reason we even get discouraged in the first place, I mean, it could be a lot of things, but in this case, he's talking about if you feel like you're working, you could be working hard, like just working, like just really like kind of grinding it out, but you feel like you're not getting anywhere, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're like, I am doing this, I'm working, but I feel like I am still at the starting position. I'm making no progress whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's when things can get discouraging and things can get, you kind of feel like you're lost in a sense, what I mean? And so that's what he's talking about. When you feel lost, then in that situation, if you need to take a second, he uses the example of tying yourself back in, to the rocks, kind of going back to the foundation and making sure you're rooted in that foundation, taking a step back, pondering, thinking, and then reevaluating and refocusing, then being able to get back in it once you've done that.
Yeah, and I think one step we do to make this possible is to tell other people and to be honest, to use our words and to clearly communicate to other people where we may be at in our journey towards our ambitions. And so he takes this interesting exchange here using the story, the illustration he uses in this book to connect us from this first part kind of this chapter, what we would label as part 1, and then kind of part 2 of this chapter where he talks about the importance of the words that we use and that we speak. And so we have to be honest with people and upfront, and a lot can be done when we use words in an intelligent manner, I guess you could say, to communicate where you are and your ambitions. Don't be afraid to be honest with other people about where you are.
Yeah. And he says here, going along with that, what we say and stuff, is that just what we say is important. You know what I mean? And we can say a lot of things, but saying the right things is important too. Because sometimes taking a step back in that, in tying, again, refocusing, re-evaluating, re-energizing, getting back to the foundation of where you're at. Sometimes you need to have conversations with people to be able to do that. You know what I mean? Be like, hey, I need to take a break in this area or this thing. I need to pause on this, and then I'll come back to it later. And he ties that in with the example of the rock climbing thing. When he wasn't tied in and his friend was coming up the wall, he had to tell him in a specific way. He had to choose the right words. He couldn't. Yes. He couldn't do it out of fear. He couldn't do it out of, a rushed kind of antsy tone. You know what I mean? He had to choose the right words and he had to say it the right way. And so that's what we need to do as well. When we need to take a step back, if we need to communicate that with people, We need to say that in the right way.
Yeah.
And not cause problems in doing it, you know?
Right. Yeah. And not that he goes into this specifically, but I think it's just important that when we do communicate with people, as many of us probably know, body language and our expression is so much of that. It's, what is it, like 90% of our conversations is not even the words that we use, but really just our body language and how we express ourselves with, from everything with the way that our eyes look and the way that our mouth is moving and stuff like that, and the way that we may be sitting or using our hands or, whatever it may be. So when we do communicate that, not only do we have to be picky about the words that we choose, but also with our expression as well. Doesn't mention that specifically in here, but I thought it was important.
Yeah.
While we're talking about communication.
Yeah, you ready to open this up and take a look at some of our quotes here that we jotted down? To start off here, he says, as you chase your ambitions, there will be some days or even entire seasons where you're not moving as quickly as you want. And again, I think someone like me, a 1 and a 3 on the Enneagram, I think we can relate to this again a lot. I feel, I constantly feel, sometimes even, honestly, probably, if I'm being honest with myself, probably on a weekly basis, I think, man, if I could only move a little bit faster here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and some of that I think is probably like practices, things I can get better at, not just, feeling stuck, you know what I mean? But yeah, that thought does come across my mind fairly often.
Yeah. But, even in these slower seasons, he says, don't merely settle for looking like you're, tied in, because he says when the shine wears off the penny in your process, don't try to fake it with the people around you. So then he says, don't settle for merely looking like you're tied in to your faith to things that last. And so again, he kind of draws back to this idea he's come to before about, okay, if things are moving a little bit slower than you imagine, and maybe, as he uses the analogy here, some of the shine wears off, some of that excitement and kind of the newness of that wears off, that's okay. Don't fake it. Just, be honest with yourself and be honest with other people, as we'll get into this communication here in a second.
And that's a hard thing to do as well, you know what I mean? Not to fake it, because I think our temptation with that is if we're not feeling it, we're just like, yeah, whatever, I'll just put on a face and I'll push through and I'll get through it and whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And, that's not what he's advising here.
No,
and,
not at all.
If we can, not do that, I think would be more beneficial for us in the long term.
Yes. Yeah.
Than trying to put on a face and push through.
Yeah. I think it definitely is going to be better for us long term. We constantly look for short term solutions, thinking that these short term solutions, or maybe if there's a shortcut towards our ambitions, that's going to help us out in some way.
Right.
But it's really not.
And he said there's no shame in telling people you need to take a step back from other responsibilities that you have. You need to maybe hit pause on some things. There's no shame in doing that, and there's no shame in being honest with people around you and telling them those things if they need to know. You know what I mean? And, he says it may seem counterintuitive, but sustaining belief looks like situational awareness of your circumstances, acknowledging the predicament, tying back in, and getting back to the work at hand. And yeah, it may seem counterintuitive to take a step back, but that's what he's saying. It's actually not, and you need to be aware, the situational awareness, aware of what's going on around you and what's going on, in you, and figuring out what you need to do. Acknowledge what's going on, and then make the right moves to get right back on track as quick as possible. And sometimes that looks counterintuitive by taking a step back.
So yeah, you're right. We do at times have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, in a sense. One thing that I love he includes in this chapter is he says, and this may, step us back a little bit, but he says that you're going to encounter some difficult people along the way towards your ambition. You're going to encounter some difficult people. But then he says, guess what? You're one of them. Yeah. You are one of these difficult people, that sometimes we can be difficult, especially when we're not picky about the words that we speak.
Yeah. I tell you what, Chris, sometimes you are that difficult person.
I am that difficult person.
I'm just joking.
I know you are.
Chris has actually never been a difficult person for me.
I'm a difficult person for myself sometimes.
I could see that to be true.
Yeah. Thank you. Is that a compliment? Anyway.
No, it's just acknowledging what you said.
We can all be difficult.
Yep, we can all be difficult.
We can all be difficult.
I'm definitely difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying as in I agree with that. I don't think you are. This has turned into quite a compliment party here.
It's like, wait, am I? Yeah. It's turned into. Is it a compliment or is it criticism? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but honestly, when I just said yeah to that, I looked down at the page where he writes on this last page of this chapter here that your words have tremendous power.
That's true.
Both the negative things and, like we've just been saying, the positive things and the affirmations that you give other people. And really, our words may be the most powerful thing any of us really have. It may not be our writing or the way that we, sell cars or whatever your ambition may be. It may not necessarily be a talent is what I'm trying to say, but really that really the most powerful thing any of us really have is our words.
Right. And I think adding this section here at the end of this chapter, he says a couple of things. First off, that sometimes I think part of the reason, sometimes what plays into us being kind of discouraged and feel like we're not making any progress can sometimes be difficult people around us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But also at the same time, I think this other point that he's kind of making here is that these difficult people, if they're wearing us down, we shouldn't let that take control, you know what I mean? And let that feeling of being stuck and that feeling of, that negative feeling that comes with that take control and do something that we really don't want to do, say something that we didn't mean to say, in those situations, because oftentimes, especially if we're already there, if we're already feeling stuck, we feel like we're not making progress, we're defeated, we're a little, downtrodden, that difficult people can often bring out the worst in us if we're already in that position.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's what he's saying is just, again, remember that your words matter as much as your actions, and pick good ones, pick good words. The stupid shelf is really wide and always has plenty of things on it to grab.
Yeah.
Don't go there, reach a little higher. When people have done this for me, they've become unforgettable. Yeah. And so we have an opportunity if we're in that spot, or even if, maybe difficult people push us a little bit towards that, we have a choice to make and how we're going to respond. And he's saying respond in a positive way, respond in a way that is proactive and will be long-term beneficial. And maybe it'll do something for that person as well.
Yeah. Well, and when we recognize that, the right words, these words that we will be picky about, when we recognize that they have the power to sustain us, we also recognize that they have the power to sustain other people. So we really do other people a benefit, and we add great value in choosing the right words to sustain them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's this chapter.
Yeah, chapter 27.
That's pretty much it. Chapter 27, check your ropes. Tomorrow is chapter 28, ground effect. Get your wheels on the ground. 2 more chapters left.
Yeah.
2 more chapters left. We are almost there.
Yes.
And if anyone listening has any thoughts on this chapter, on chapter 27, check your ropes, feel free to reach out to us at Read to Know Pod on all social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Sometimes I check Twitter, not very often, but sometimes.
But we're on there.
Read to Know Pod. And you can send us an email as well. readtoknowpod@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. You can reach out to us there. Tell us your thoughts. If you leave a rating and a review, it would help out a ton because it would help push new listeners to our podcast. If you also email that to us, readtoknowpod@gmail.com, we'll take a look at it, read it, and share it here on the podcast even to share your wonderful review with the world. And lastly, I mentioned this the last few days, but if you are interested in supporting the show, it would help out a ton. It would help keep the show at a high quality level, and it would help keep it sustainable long term, because that's what we want to do. So if you're willing to support, you want to support, you can go to readtoknowpod.com/support, readtoknowpod.com/support, and you can check out, we have some merch available. You can get a very cool Read to Know mug and phone case. Those are coming to me right now. They're on the
Sweet.
way. I'm excited to get those.
Yep.
You got a sticker on the way.
I got a sticker on the way. I soon will get a mug. I want to get a phone case like you got, bath mat, face mask, all kinds of things. So check that out.
So many great things there.
Yeah.
But you can check out some Read to Know merch. That would be awesome. And there's also a Patreon there that you can go and be a Patreon supporter. I'm working on tiers as we speak. So if you have any ideas for Patreon tiers, you guys want some rewards, is there anything that we can do to help bring the listeners more value? That's what I want to do. And I'm trying to find the right ideas to do that because I want it to be something worthwhile to everyone involved. So I'm trying to find the right ideas for us. So if you have any ideas for a Patreon tier, feel free to also let us know, readtoknowpod@gmail.com. But that is there as well if you are interested. So anyway, thanks again. It would mean a ton if you did check it out and support readtoknowpod.com/support. Anyway, thanks again for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for chapter 28.